Hello everyone, I'm Zinan from Penn State. Today I'm presenting the paper Community Begins Where Moderation Ends, Peer Support and its Implication for Community-Based Rehabilitation. Let's begin with toxicity in games. The term toxicity serves as an umbrella term to describe behaviors that disrupt the player experiences of other players. Common types of toxicity in games include verbal abuse, away from keyboard, or griefing. Toxicity can impact the player experiences and well-being in very negative ways. For example, toxicity can scare away new players and bring anxiety and depression to the victim of toxic conduct. Also, when toxicity becomes normalized, it can even bring more toxicity. Researchers have explored many strategies to manage toxicity and its impact. For example, games can use both positive and negative incentives to foster pro-social behaviors and discourage toxic ones. Victims can be empowered to better cope with toxicity. And last but not least, online games use moderation to catch and punish toxic players. A typical moderation approach works in this way. First, a toxic player is flagged either automatically or by other players. Second, the moderation system determines whether to punish toxic players and issue a penalty proportional to the severity of toxicity. The punished approach in moderation system is similar to the concept of retributive justice in criminology, which aims to punish offenders proportionally to their wrongdoings as they deserve such punishment. However, retributive justice has multiple limitations. It may not effectively reform offenders' future behavior. For example, offenders might come from disadvantaged backgrounds that heavily influence their actions, making punishment less effective in reforming their future behaviors. The online context further complicates the implementation of retributive justice. For example, toxicity is often subjective and multifaceted, leading to discrepancies in perceptions of what constitutes toxic behavior. These subjectivities make it challenging to determine a fair proportion of punishment, complicating the maintenance of justice in gaming environment. Criminologists have reflected on retributive justice and suggested that restorative justice offers some unique benefits and can overcome the limitations of retributive justice. Restorative justice focuses on repairing harm from the perspectives of multi-stakeholders. It is important to clarify that restorative justice does not conflict with retributive justice. We can still rely on retributive justice to establish a fundamental threshold for punished offenders. However, beyond mere punishment, it is crucial to explore how harm can be repaired and its impact mitigated from a restorative viewpoint to get offenders toward positive behavior changes. Restorative justice includes various stakeholders, including the victims, bystanders, and offenders. This research focuses on the offender's perspective. According to criminologists' observation, a practical approach for restorative justice is a community-based rehabilitative approach. This approach aims to provide individuals offenders with positive reinforcement through community-based activities to facilitate their behavior transformations and social reintegration into community. Some criminologists argue that offenses are learned behaviors, which implies they can be unlearned through offender re-education. The core principle of this approach is to enact change at the cognitive level, thereby influencing offenders' future behaviors accordingly. In the context of online gaming, we wonder how toxic players can be re-educated to reform their future behaviors. The initial step in this re-education process involves informing toxic players about the reasons behind their moderation. Specifically, it is crucial to communicate which norms they have violated that led to their moderation. This raises the question of how toxic players should be educated about these norms. While formal training is one of the methods to educate them, learning through peer support presents an alternative way. Peer support refers to assistance from the community that encourages the learner to engage in dialogues related to the performance and standards, thereby facilitating learning from their peers. Research across various fields, including education, has highlighted the significant potential of peer support in enabling effective learning and fostering mutual understanding among individuals. Inspired by community-based rehabilitation from criminology, our study wants to understand how player community could potentially offer peer support to punish the players, aiding them to reform their future behaviors. We then decide to investigate the peer support provided by community and understand how this support can help punish the player to reform their future behaviors. Therefore, we ask 3 research questions. First, how to punish the player seek support from other community members. Second, how does the player community respond? And third, how do such support seeking and support giving correspond to each other? For our study, we selected the League of Legends player community and chose subreddit in this game as our study site. This subreddit is one of the largest player community for League of Legends, and it is a place where many players post about how they got punished and then initiate conversations with their fellow players. Thus, we believe that players' conversation about punishment provide an ideal site for understanding peer support seeking and support giving about moderation. We gathered raw data through iterative keyword search. In total, we have 26 keywords such as got punishment, ban, and warning. We collected 3,125 threads as our raw data. After the screening process, we have 789 threads and their related comments. Then, after a random sampling process, we have 944 initiated posts and 1,736 comments. Finally, after removing disagreement and invalid data, we have 640 initiated posts and 1,377 comments for data analysis. To analyze the data, we conducted content analysis to address our first and second research questions. We then used the co-occurrence analysis to determine how these 2 types of data were related, thereby giving the potential benefits of peer support. So let's look at the first research question, how punish the player sought support from community members. In total, we found 8 themes. The chart here shows the distribution of these themes. For example, sometimes punish the player perceive unfairness in the punishment. Sometimes they will give details of punishment context to justify their toxic behaviors, and sometimes they seek information about the punishment. In the interest of time, I'm going to show 2 examples for how punish the players seek information and how they perceive unfairness in the punishment. For more details, please refer to our paper. For how punish the players seek information, this quote is from a punished player whose account got permanently banned because someone else logged into their account and did some suspicious activity. Like this player said, they never played the character vocals, but their account showed that they had a match before for playing this character. This punished player has messaged the game company support team, but the support team did not believe that there was any suspicious activity. So the punished player seeks support from community member about what they can do for this punishment. Informational seeking can be seen as seeking informational support. Besides that, punished player also seek for emotional support. For example, we also found that punished player perceive unfairness in punishment. For example, this player shared that I got abused and told to kill myself. All I did was defend myself, but I'm the one who got banned. In this case, the punished player was not the only one who conducted toxicity, but they assumed that they are the only one who got punishment. The punished player compares moderation decisions, perceive inconsistency in the decisions, and complains that the moderation decision is unfair. Based on the punished player inquiries, we then analyzed how community members respond to them. We have 8 themes in total for community member response. The chart here shows the frequencies of different types of peer support. For example, some community members suggest future behaviors to the punished players. Some community members provide information they know about the punishment, and some community members criticize the punished player by supporting the moderation decisions. Due to the time limit, I'm going to show 2 quotes for how community members provide future behavior suggestions and support the moderation decision. Let's first look at how community members support moderation decisions. For example, this community member said, telling people to report him is not attacking. Then at the end, they said, you earned the chat restriction. In this case, the community member confirmed that the punished player is toxic and thus deserves a punishment. We also found that community member provides future behavior suggestions regarding to how to better act to avoid moderation. For example, this is a response to a player who got a warning for away from keyboard because during the game, that player needed to help a family member. This community member suggested this player to inform their family when they play because they made a commitment to the game if they start to play. After we understand what good support seeking and support giving could be, I would like to share some potential benefits of such peer support that happen in conversations about moderation. And this comes under our findings in research question 3. For this research question, we calculated the co-occurrence of support seeking and support giving. From the co-occurrence patterns, we found 3 potential benefits of peer support. First, we found that community member provides a lot of future behavior suggestions, which means that peer support could be instructive in guiding moderated players towards self-improvement and positive behavior changes. Second, we found that community member likes to provide information they know about moderation. And this infers that peer support often involves sharing insights into moderation process. Finally, we found that community members also reflect on the limitation of moderation decisions. For example, sometimes a player complains that the moderation system does not understand the specific context of their gameplay. And this infers that peer support can encompass critical dimensions to punished players. To summarize, we would like to return to our paper title, by which we mean that when moderation stops at issuing penalty to players, oftentimes players rely on their community for support. Our work contributes to the moderation literature by pointing out the gap between what moderation system does and what punished player needs. It turns out that punished players have unmet informational and emotional needs. For example, they may seek more information about punishment, and sometimes they perceive unfairness and seek for emotional support. But the moderation system falls short in supporting these punished players. In this paper, we found that community steps in to fill the gap. We would like to call out the efforts community members are already doing. This peer support can be considered as a community-based rehabilitative approach, which has its potential to reform toxic players' future behavior and mitigate toxicity. Lastly, I would like to summarize our work's contribution. Besides the retributive justice that had been studied a lot in moderation, this paper turns to restorative justice. In restorative justice, there are many stakeholders such as victims, bystanders, and offenders. And this paper focuses on the offender's perspective and specifically the community-based rehabilitation where community help the offender to reform their behaviors. This paper reports how peer support can be considered as a community-based rehabilitative approach to reform toxic players' future behavior and thus mitigate toxicity. We believe that lots can be done in future regarding how to design interventions that incorporate rehabilitative values in video game moderation. Thank you so much for your attention.